Hello, I'm Rafe Foreman, and today Chris Stoy and I, as Warriors for Justice, want to talk to you about contingency fees.
Yeah.
Now, I want to start off with saying that there's a misnomer out there from the public that contingency fees are bad, that lawyers are greedy and they take a third or 40% of your case, and that is a bad thing.
Well, who's spreading those rumors?
Mainly insurance companies and politicians.
I'd agree with that.
And so let me give you the truth about contingency fees. Let's take it in an employment situation first, Chris.
All right.
You've just lost your job. You believe that there is a reason that you have a claim against your former employer for wrongful termination. Do you have any money to go hire a lawyer?
Probably not.
That's right, because unfortunately, most Americans live paycheck to paycheck, and if you've lost your job, how are you going to go pay a lawyer $300 or $400 an hour to handle your claim? The truth is, you're not going to. Contingency fees, however, allow you the opportunity to litigate your rights with a team of lawyers who will be compensated out of the settlement or out of the jury verdict at the end of the case. Let me tell you how devastating the lack of contingency fees are to your rights as American citizens. In Texas, we formerly had a workers' comp situation where if you were injured on the job, you're laid up at home, you can't go to work, you're having to treat with a physician, and you're not getting paid, and they terminate you. Previously, you could take that case on a contingency fee. But our legislature down in Austin passed a law that contingency fees are outlawed in workers' comp cases. You know what happened to workers' comp cases? They went away. You handle workers' comp cases?
We do not.
I don't either. And
we stay away from them is with a 10-foot stick if we can.
And the reason for that is because you don't have any money to pay. If you've lost your job, you've been hurt on the workforce, you're off on workers' comp, you don't have any money to pay a lawyer.
If I can add a side note on that,
Please.
Something I've seen that when the legislature enacts certain things that kill a way for a trial lawyer to economically represent someone in an action, all of a sudden those things go unchecked. Now, and I'm sure you've seen it, if someone must treat with a workers' comp doctor, the treatment that they receive is horrendous. And the workers' comp doctor is going to send them back to the doctor with their arm could be hanging by a thread, and they'd say, you just go ahead and go on back to the doctor.
That's exactly right. We've literally had cases where a person has a limb removed and a workers' comp doctor places 0 to 5% disability on that individual.
Yep.
It's just remarkable.
And that's because there's no
check and balance.
We as trial lawyers can't hold them responsible anymore.
That's right. And if you watch our series on what a lawyer can do for you, one of the things a lawyer can do for you is to litigate your rights and be a check and balance on doctors who are offering poor treatment. There's another thing we can do with contingency fees. How about holding doctors accountable for losses that happen in medical malpractice cases?
It's tough.
It is tough. And, you know, a guy that makes $500,000 a year is able to, and has an insurance company behind him, has the ability to have many lawyers litigating and defending their claim. How about you? How about the injured party? How about the party who had the sponge left inside after the surgery and developed sepsis after 3 or 4 days at home? Is that your fault? Should you have to pay for that? You got to bring out your savings and your life savings and mortgage your house in order to have a lawyer to defend you or prosecute your claim?
No.
That's another advantage of having contingency fees.
Well, let's talk about what also is included in a contingency fee representation, and that is paying of expenses up front and covering those expenses, and in the event, eating those expenses if we lose, right? And those expenses include hiring experts. So can you talk about why it is important that your lawyer hire experts in your case and how that works with the contingency fee agreement?
Yes, and what Chris is mentioning applies in an employment case, a car wreck case, a medical malpractice case. Almost every kind of case needs an expert. So let's say you need, in a medical malpractice case, you need an expert to show what the doctor did wrong. we can't leave it up to the jury to determine whether a doctor did the wrong thing by sewing a sponge up inside of you.
Well, and in Texas, if you don't have an expert to opine on the doctor's standard of care, your case gets kicked out by the judge.
That's right. As a matter of fact, Chris, you have to have an expert witness before you can file suit, or you have to post a bond, put up $20,000 cash before you can go forward in your suit. So you have to have an expert. And who pays that? Have you got $20,000 to go lay down and hire an expert? Most people don't. Most people, if you do have it, you don't want to spend it. And part of the contingency fee agreement that you have in Texas is that the lawyer, and this is negotiable, will cover the cost of that litigation expense so that it comes out of your portion of the settlement at the end of the case.
Yeah, and to be fair, what Rafe means by that, and this is common practice in the industry, is take, for example, you get a $100,000 trial judgment, okay? So that means we've gone all the way through. Our fees are going to come off the top. Our percentage is coming off the top. And then we pay all the expenses like the experts, and then the remainder goes is split up between the medical bills that need to be paid and goes to you. Depends on what our expenses are. Obviously, in a $100,000 case, we're going to keep them low. But you know, shoot, last October I had a case where we needed to go all the way through trial, and I had about $85,000 in expenses with experts. That was only half about what the defense spent, but $85,000, but it was worth it because we hired really good experts and were able to get a $1.3 million verdict for our client. Now, $85,000 seems like a lot of money, but when it generates a verdict like that and a payment like that to you for what you've been through, it's worth it.
It is worth it. I want to go back to your example of a $100,000 case. In that situation, it might be that, and I hear this a lot from clients, with our percentage and our cost, the law firm is getting more than I am. How is that fair?
It happens. It does.
And the reason it's fair is because had we not spent the money on the experts and the litigation of the case, there would be no settlement. There would be nothing for us to be talking about. But let me give you a different scenario. Instead of thinking of it as, well, my lawyer under this scenario might be getting more than I am, let's think about this. How much were they offering you before you got a lawyer? Oh, nothing? Well, now it doesn't seem so bad, does it? As a matter of fact, we have cases that have taken 7 years from the day we took the case till it was finally resolved on appeal before any money ever changed hands. We have to keep paying our employees. We have to keep our offices open.
Yep.
And we're carrying that debt load for 7 years. That is the justification for the contingency fee, is the lawyers bearing the cost. And then I want to follow up on something that Chris said earlier. Eat the cost. Our firm has a policy, and not all firms do, but our firm policy is if we don't recover, you don't have to pay. And that means if we've paid an expert $20,000 and have $10,000 cost in depositions, our firm eats that. We pay it, and we don't look for you to pay it. That's a big advantage to hiring a law firm who's willing to put their name and goodwill and money on the line for you.
Well, and let's say time. You know, if I were to record my time on some of these cases, it gets into the hundreds, sometimes thousands of hours, especially if it's cumulative across the entire firm. Big $1 million case that we take to trial, I mean, that's, I know you and I, we're the type who we're not going to sleep, you know, working that case up. And but that's what we do. You know, it takes a special lawyer to work on a contingency fee because there's no immediate gratification. There's no immediate payment. It's passion work, I think, don't you?
I totally agree. I have a case that I've been working on 1,000 hours, Chris. And if you look at my hourly rate, $300, $350 an hour, that's $350,000 worth of value I've put in that case.
Yeah. Something else I want to add is the way I feel is I'm not going to work less on your case just because maybe there's a $30,000 insurance or it's a low case. I mean, I've got cases where if we divided my amount, the time that I spent by what we collect, I was probably working for $7 an hour.
That's right.
But I'm not going to, what's the word? I'm not going to be lazy on your case. You know, I'm going to work it right. And I think that's a rule that we have in this firm. undoubtedly. Like, you work the case, you don't give up on the case, you don't give up on the client. You make sure that you do what is required to get that case to trial and to give it your best shot, no matter what the outcome could be.
I think it's more than a rule. I think at our firm it's a culture. We don't take your case unless it's the most important case that we have going to trial at that week. We treat every case, whether it's a $10,000 value case or a $10 million value case, with all the gusto and resources that we have, because we know it's your most important case. It's the only case that you've got going, and we treat it that way.
Yeah.
I want to say another thing about contingency fees. You hear about these contingency fees being limited. As a matter of fact, in class actions, they only allow you to get 25%.
Of federal tort claims.
Federal tort claims, you're limited on your contingency fee. What does that do to the average person's rights? Well, I'll tell you what it does. It diminishes the pool of lawyers that you have access to, because some lawyers just can't afford to carry that debt for that long, work on that case for 1,000 hours at a 25% contingency fee.
And that gets a little bit into our view of politics, but I agree with you. It is frustrating.
Well, I don't mean to be political. I mean to be, it's a reality.
Well, true.
Because when you limit let me ask you this. Is any other profession that you know of limited in the amount of money they can charge for their services?
I'm not aware of one.
I mean, shouldn't we tell doctors the most you can charge for this is this amount?
The insurance companies do that, but that's just because they seem to control everything.
Shouldn't we tell the grocer selling you the milk, this is the most you can sell this milk for?
Be nice.
Yeah, but they don't. We're the only industry that I'm aware of whose fees are limited by the legislature.
Well, and whose damages are capped, and that's a whole nother story.
Well, we have an entire session on cap and damages, and I'm going to encourage you to tune in. But today, for contingency fees, that's all we have. I'm Rafe Foreman.
I'm Chris Stoy.
And we're the Warriors for Justice, and we look forward to, thank you for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next time.